We are just 8 days away from Super Bowl 50, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a special Super Bowl week edition of Sports Krunch with Dkrom. Tonight, we are going to talk about the Broncos and what they have to do to come away with the win. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Panthers and what they have to do to come away with the win. And also, we are going to be talking about the Hall of Fame selection process and other interesting facts that go on in this annual sports holiday weekend that is Super Bowl week here in the United States of America. It is the monumental 50th Super Bowl and hopefully many more to come between the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos. And it should be a very interesting game as at least that's what we're all hoping for. And joining me tonight to break down the Broncos side of things is Jake Marsing of MileHighHuddle.com. He does a great job covering the team for that website, and it's a pleasure to welcome Jake to the show for the very first time. How you doing tonight, Jake?
I'm doing well, Dkrom. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you, Jake. You're very welcome, and thank you for donating your time. And let's get down to business. And yes, in surprising fashion, I should admit, the Denver Broncos, for the second time in 3 seasons, have made it to a Super Bowl. But this time, they did it in super unique, interesting fashion. Talk about Peyton Manning and a team led by Peyton Manning, but this time it's the defense doing most of the work compared to the one from 2 years ago. And talk about having to do it, start like 6 games with a backup quarterback who had no prior experience, yet they still found ways to grind it out, gut it out, and win. And in a world-shocking performance against the borderline impenetrable New England Patriots, they did what very few teams have been able to do to Tom Brady in the past by making him uncomfortable, which gives them a chance to win their 3rd Super Bowl in franchise history and make Peyton Manning complete his legendary career with another Lombardi trophy. And but if you look at this matchup as we get to the question here, I'm sure everybody remembers the 2 years ago, the Broncos headed to the Super Bowl. They faced a team that was very, very physical, like these Carolina Panthers, with a mobile quarterback and a defense that was just super fast, and a team that just had this attitude: we don't care how we win, we just want to beat you to a pulp kind of mentality. But and many people, including part of myself, are expecting that same outcome again for the Broncos. A long day in which they get beat to a pulp, but deep down inside, I'm hoping not. Seriously, I want a good game. I want a close game. I don't want another super boring game, and that's what most of America would not want. So in your opinion, do these Broncos have a better chance of winning in the Super Bowl against such a physical opponent than the 2013 team did? Why or why not?
Oh, absolutely they do. There's no question about it, because that defense gives them a chance to stay in every game. I saw you were predicting a pretty big blowout for the Panthers. That's not going to happen. I can guarantee you a few things in life. One of them is that this Denver Bronco defense will not allow a blowout in this game. They may lose the game, but that defense will not allow it to get out of hand. They just won't. That's the difference for me. You go back and you look at the defense the Broncos fielded in Super Bowl 48. We talked about it on our show this week. Harris Lennon was the starting inside linebacker for that Bronco defense. That defense was awful, and it showed. The offense didn't play well either. This is a very different kind of team. This Broncos team is a tough, grinded-out, physical football team that wants to enforce their will in the running game and play great defense. And if they can do that, they're going to have a shot to beat the Panthers. So absolutely, this Broncos team has a better chance than the one that played 2 years ago.
I actually agree with you there. And another factor that I think you left out was the changes in coaches. And many people in the national media as well as in the Chicago media, where I'm coming to you from, said that this is like the John Fox Bowl. both of John Fox's prior former teams facing off against each other, but I think you could say that both Gary Kubiak and Ron Rivera have been massive upgrades compared to John Fox, because both Kubiak and Rivera both had prior playing experience. They both played in Super Bowls, and Kubiak's situation. And no, they both coached in Super Bowls too. But those are two guys strike me as coaches that you would be willing to run through a dozen brick walls for, and that's and both teams have that mentality for their coaches, and I think you should expect no less from that. But that score I predicted was for other reasons, and I think this is the reason why I kind of see it unfolding that way. The Panthers offense with MVP Cam Newton and the Broncos defense is strength against strength. But if you go to opposite, the Broncos offense with Peyton Manning, who this is probably his last game, and that Panthers defense, especially that front seven, that brick wall of a front seven, might I add, it looks like the ultimate mismatch in my eyes. And Peyton Manning obviously led the league in interceptions, and the Panthers led the league in turnovers. And with the offensive line issues the Broncos had, I just don't know how they'll be able to handle K'Wan Short, Star Lotulelei, Luke Kuechly, and even a 1.5 arm Thomas Davis, because that guy's such a tough SOB, can play through almost anything. And I just have this fear that that they're going to force Peyton Manning and his 39-year-old arm into mistakes, which will lead to them blowing this game open right from the start. That's just the feeling I have. But I was reading analysis from some of the Denver media, including you, and you said that Peyton Manning is going to have his best game of the season in order for the Broncos to win. And however, I don't think that's almost impossible to me against this Carolina Panthers defense. The question is there anything the Broncos can do to avoid putting Peyton Manning into a situation where he has to play his best game of the season?
Oh, absolutely. He has to be able to play his best game of the season from a management perspective. I'm not saying he has to be able to throw 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. I'm saying he has to be able to manage the game well, and they have to. To answer your question, they have to run the football. It will start up front with the ability to run the football, to win on first and second down, keep the defense off balance, and be able to run the football to kind of slow down that pass rush that the Panthers have, especially those interior rushers that you mentioned. If they can run the football, if they can get to 125, which is the number that I look at, the Broncos are 13-0 the last 13 times they've gotten to 125 yards on the ground. If they can do that, they have a shot in this ballgame. That means they take it out of Peyton Manning's hands, they put it on the running game and the defense, and that's the kind of game that they can win. If it gets into a shootout where you're trusting Peyton Manning to throw the ball 50 times, they're going to get blown out. But I just don't think that's the kind of game we're going to see.
Yes, it's a big if, in my opinion, whether Denver could run the ball, because like I said, that Panthers defensive front seven is a brick wall with
absolutely
like Star Lotulelei, K'Wan Short, and obviously Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis. But what do you think they will have to do in the running game? Any specific like schematic things or creativity that they're going to have to do in order to try to get cracks in that wall that is the Carolina front seven?
Well, for me, it's not about anything running to either side or anything like that. It's about committing to the running game. Even if you saw it in the Patriots game this weekend, they didn't get a lot on the ground. They got 1-2 yards on their carries in the first half, and then C.J. Anderson busts that 30-yarder that puts them in good field position, and they're able to score points on that drive. That's the kind of thing that you have to do. Commit to the running game, chip away, and eventually you'll hit a big one. In terms of schematically, I think if you want to run outside, this could be a big Ronnie Hillman game as well, to try and get away from that interior line, which I think really is the strength of the Panthers defense. Panthers defense is built really well from the middle out, starting with Kuechly and Lotulelei and all those great interior guys that they've got. If you can run away from those guys, that's always going to be helpful. But I think committing to the running game is going to be key for the Broncos.
You bring up a good point. They have to be persistent, because the only way that they are going to get anything out of their running game is if they be persistent. They cannot afford to give it up, and the defense is going to have to hold their end of the bargain and making sure that Panthers offense doesn't pull away. So that is arguably the key, is staying persistent, as you said, and I agree.
Yep.
And moving on to the next question. There are two things that I have not liked from the media this week. One is all this attack on Cam Newton's character. It's BS in my opinion. He is who he is, but the fact that how can you fault him for like celebrating when he scores a touchdown or giving a kid a football every time he scores a touchdown? That's a bunch of baloney. This Cam Newton behavior thing is so overrated. He has matured tremendously. But that's for tomorrow's show. But that's one of the storylines I can't stand. The storyline I can't stand on the Broncos standpoint is that, this is a make-or-break legacy game for Peyton Manning. I couldn't disagree more. I think his legacy is set in stone, and in my opinion, I don't think it's going to diminish or even augment due to the outcome of this game. That's just my opinion, because if the Broncos win, it's going to be more due to the defense than to Peyton Manning. So that won't necessarily put him above Montana and Brady on the all-time great quarterbacks list. But that's just my opinion. But I just want your take on this. Do you think Peyton's Manning's legacy will either diminish or be made greater based on the outcome of this game?
I half agree with you. I don't think it can hurt him if they lose this game because it'll be viewed as, he was at the end of his career. He was riding that defense, and maybe the defense didn't come through for him. But if they win this ball game, I do think it can help him. I think 10, 15 years down the line, when you're looking at Peyton Manning, he'll be a two-time Super Bowl champion. He'll be the only quarterback up to this point in NFL history to have won a Super Bowl with two different teams. It will add significantly to his legacy. I don't think it can detract from him, though, no. I mean, you look at John Elway. Had John Elway not won a Super Bowl his last year, he would have been thought of, he probably would have been forgotten. He would have been thought of as, the lesser to Dan Marino. But instead, Elway is able to go out against the Green Bay Packers in Super Bowl 32 and the Falcons in 33 with two back-to-back Super Bowl wins. And in Super Bowl 32, Elway was awful. He was bad in that game. He rode the defense and he rode Will Davis. If Peyton Manning can do that, I think his legacy will be just as strong, if not stronger, than Elway's when you consider everything else that Manning has brought to the game, calling his game at the line of scrimmage, the ability to read a defense, the smartest quarterback to ever play the position. If they can win, I think it helps him, but I agree. I don't think it can hurt him much by losing. It's maybe a little hypocritical, but I think that's where it stands for me.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what Mike Wilbon said a couple years ago when the Broncos were in Super Bowl 48, that Peyton Manning only had something to gain and not something to lose from that game. So there's a lot of common sense sports reporters and journalists who are in that school of thought, as am I. But I'm just slightly different in that regard. But I will say this, though. If Manning wins another Super Bowl, that'll lock him up in spot number 3, and it will prove a point that I've been trying to prove all along, that the difference between him and Tom Brady isn't as gargantuan as some of those trolls up in New England think. So
I agree with you. I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I still like Tom Brady. I still think he's one of the best ever. So don't get me wrong, Patriots fans. He still is. He still is. So last night he didn't change a goddamn thing about Tom Brady in my eyes. So, but just like Peyton, he has his weaknesses too. Well, the New England, I think, just did a better job protecting them more than Peyton's team said. And now moving on to the other question, we kind of alluded to it a couple minutes ago. Matchups that'll decide the game, like I kind of alluded to, like the Broncos offensive line against the Starla Tulane and K'Wan Short of the Panthers defensive line as a potential game-deciding matchup. Are there – I want you to think of two more potential matchups that could decide the outcome of this game. One on the offensive side of the ball for the Broncos and the other on the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos.
I'll give you that one. The one that you mentioned is probably the top one for me as well, is can that offensive line open up holes in the running game and give Peyton at times a complete throws. On the defensive side of the ball, I think it's Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware against the tackles for the Panthers. The Broncos are going to probably use a mush rush to get at Cam, where they're not going to rush heavy. They're going to come in a little bit quieter. I look at the Green Bay game as kind of the mold for how the Broncos are going to look here. You rush quiet. You hope that you can hold up in coverage on the back end. So the Broncos rushers, Ware and Miller, being able to contain Cam in the pocket and put a little bit of pressure on him as well is going to be important. And I think they win those matchups against the Panthers tackles. The Panthers line is built really well in the middle. They're a little bit weak on the tackle spots. Another one on the Broncos offensive side of the ball is going to be Demaryius Thomas and Josh Norman. That's a key matchup. DT has to have a big game this week. He's got to come up with better numbers than 2 catches for 12 yards on 7 targets, which were his AFC championship numbers. Demaryius Thomas is paid like a top 5 receiver in the NFL, and he's played like it very sparingly this year. DT needs to have a big game and win his matchups against Josh Norman if the Broncos are going to come through. And I'm not talking about 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm talking about winning on third down matchups, completing slant routes across the middle of the field, and finding ways to get open. That's going to be the important one on the offensive side, besides the one you mentioned earlier, which is the O-line against that Panthers front seven.
Yes. Yes, I agree with all those. Those are key matchups to keep an eye on Super Bowl Sunday. And it's kind of escaping my mind here, but it came back. Because of Demaryius Thomas's struggles as of late, would you be surprised if the Panthers actually put Josh Norman on Emmanuel Sanders instead? Because keep in mind, they are if there's any weakness on this Carolina Panthers team that could be exploited, it could be their lack of depth at the quarterback position with Benet Benwikere and Peanut Tillman on injured reserve. So with Sanders being arguably the most trustworthy target for Manning, do you think it's possible that Ron Rivera could put him, or Sean McDermott in this instance, Panthers defensive coordinator, could put Josh Norman on Emmanuel Sanders at just as much or if not more than him on Demaryius Thomas?
I think that'd be a mistake if they were to do that. I can't tell you what the Panthers coaching staff is thinking. I'm not in those meetings or in those conversations or in those press junkets. I think it'd be a mistake if they did that. Demaryius has not been particularly reliable this season, but he's still a freaky athlete. He's still 6'3", 225, can run like the wind. If you were to, the only guy that can match up with him in the Panthers secondary, in my opinion, is Norman, and I think their coaching staff will recognize that. Norman also doesn't really travel much. He'll tend to stay to one side of the field. So you may see that matchup with Sanders on Norman, or with DT trying to find his own spaces. But if you do, it's more likely that that's coming from the Broncos side, where they're trying to create a favorable matchup for DT than it would be that the Panthers are traveling Norman or finding their matchups for Norman. So I think if they were to do that, it would be a mistake. They might. I mean, I can't tell you what they're thinking, but it's I wouldn't do that if I were Ron Rivera and that coaching staff.
Yeah, I definitely see it. Plus, and with how Peyton Manning is nowadays, you should definitely play to your strengths as a defense. So
yep.
And we're almost finished actually. But I just want to add a couple more things before we go to our prediction segment. Brock Osweiler. I know how much there's a chasm, dare I say, at your publication, your website about Brock Osweiler against Peyton Manning, and you were the one crowing when Brock was starting. That saying, no, you got to go back to Peyton. You got to go back to Peyton, and other people say, no, don't do that, don't do that. But as a matter of fact, I don't think it matters who the Broncos play quarterback in this game, my opinion. But from a schematic standpoint, Brock Osweiler, it is easier to run the ball, in my opinion, with him at quarterback than with Peyton Manning, because the Panthers are going to stack the box against Peyton Manning, whose arm obviously can barely throw the ball 10 yards anymore. And they'll and against Osweiler, who has more of a rocket for an arm. It's not the strongest, but it's definitely has a lot more juice than Peyton Manning's right now. They'll have to be more honest and back some people off, which could create more running lanes. And you say running the ball is key to winning this game. So the question is, why keep Peyton Manning instead of Brock Osweiler if running the ball with Osweiler is easier based on that school of thought?
Well, I disagree with your premise, first of all. I don't know that running the ball is better with Brock Osweiler than it is with Peyton Manning. I think Peyton gets you in better run plays consistently. Brock was running his running backs into blitzes regularly. He doesn't have a lot of field awareness yet, and that may be something that comes with time for Brock. We'll see. But, I think it's going to come down. I agree with you that they're going to try and stack the box. They're going to try and play up close, and that's why Peyton's going to have to hit some deep throws. He's going to have to do that. We've said that all year. He did it a couple of times last game. He had the 34-yarder to Emmanuel. That was kind of the jump ball. He had the 2 touchdown passes to Owen Daniels in the AFC title game. He's going to have to hit throws like that. We're not talking about 50-yard bombs. He's never hit those really, since he's been in Denver, certainly. I've said it on our show a lot. I look at Peyton Manning as a very similar guy to the one who came to Denver 3 years ago. He didn't have a cannon. Maybe he's dropped off a little bit, but it's not nearly as precipitous as one might think. I really think that Peyton Manning absolutely gives you the best chance to win because of his ability to read a defense, his ability to command an offense, and his ability to get you in the right play every single time. And he's done something that I've really liked in these playoffs. He's made safe throws. Very rarely, maybe 3 or 4 times, has he made a throw that I really thought was a mistake. And he's gotten away with them. Now, against this Panthers team and with Luke Kuechly roam in the middle of the field like he does, we'll see how he can get away with them. But, I think, like I said during that whole conversation, I think Peyton absolutely gives you the best chance to win and to run the football because he's going to get you in the right place.
You brought up a lot of good points there, Jake, and I would absolutely go back to that game against the Chargers. And keep in mind, the Broncos were a win or loss away from either the number 1 seed or the number 5 seed in that game. And the offense, even though it wasn't Brock Osweiler's fault, they seemed out of sync and they were repetitively turning the ball over. But there's something about that psychological dimension that Peyton Manning brings that Brock Osweiler does not at the moment. And it's those dimensions that you can't quantify, especially in high-stakes football games. Wouldn't you say so?
I completely agree with everything you just said, Dkrom, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. And that brings us to our final segment of the night, predictions. Do you have any early predictions to make in this game or a guess? And even if you don't, that's perfectly fine because a lot of people like to take their time in giving them the best prediction or guess possible. Your prediction but for right now, give me the score and who will be the MVP.
All right, I'm not confident in this yet. So this is a preliminary score. I think there's a way for Denver to win this game. Like I've said, it's being able to manage the ball, run the ball well, play good defense, and create turnovers. But again, my early lean right now is Carolina, and that may surprise you as somebody here in Denver. But it's not going to be a blowout. It's going to be like a 6-point ball game. My pick right now would be 26-20 Carolina. Your MVP is Cam Newton. That would be my pick. It very well could change. I'm not quite done watching tape on the Panthers yet. I need to go back and watch a couple of ball games, and we'll see. So stay tuned to my Twitter things and such, because I may not lock that pick in later in the week. But right now, my pick is Carolina 26-20, just because of the thing you said earlier. I agree with you that Peyton Manning's going to have to make some throws in this ball game, and against the defense that led the NFL in turnovers this year, I don't know if on paper I can trust him not to turn the football over yet. If he can, it's a very challenging team that they're going to be playing on Sunday, and we will find out whether or not they can get it done. But my early lean is Carolina.
That is the lead of most everybody in this nation. But that said, this is exactly how the Broncos like it. They feed off of effects, and they have proven us wrong all the time this year. And don't you think they're like going into the Super Bowl with that kind of a mentality of saying like they want to be doubted?
Absolutely. No, I said on our show this week, everything intangible. The mentality of the teams, the experience of the teams, that all tells me Denver's going to win. But on paper, I just can't look at the matchups and say Denver has an advantage. I think that defense is going to play with a lot of swagger. And if they can come out and put on the kind of performance they did against the Patriots, I may be eating crow in a week and a half. And I hope I am. As somebody who lives in this city, I sure hope I am. I hope I get to cover. There we go. I hope I get to cover a parade.
Well, let me tell you this. I remain confident in my pick that the Panthers will pull it out because I just believe that there's Ron Rivera has, I'm sure you know, Ron Rivera played for the 85 Bears. Yes, he was a special teamer, but he was around that team with Mike Ditka, Mike Singletary, Walter Payton, that historically great team. He has brought that attitude and that style of play to the Panthers with a lot, with the added dimensions of the modern play of a quarterback like Cam Newton. So I just have a hard time betting against the Panthers. But I'll tell you this: if the Broncos prove me and many other people wrong yet again, I will be at that parade in Denver with a dunce cap on my head.
Well, I will be happy to take a picture of that and throw it up on MHH. We'll get you all over the place. I would be happy to see that for sure. And I hope it's the case too. This city has gone without a major sports championship for since 2001, so 15 years now, and they're itching for one.
However, I would like to say this. That's a good point, but the Carolinas have 0 pro sports championships.
That's true.
None.
That's true. But I don't live in the Carolinas. I don't have to make up for the Carolinas.
I know, but you could say they're just as hungry as the city of Denver is. You can't underestimate that. But still, like I said, if the Broncos win, I am flying into Denver from Chicago with that dunce cap on my head, and I will meet you fair and square. Got it?
All right. We'll get together. Absolutely, for sure.
Sounds great. And once again, Jake, thank you so much for joining us tonight to give us the preview on the Broncos side of things for the show. And before we go, I want you to let our listeners know who you are and where they can find your work.
Yeah, I cover the Broncos from milehighhuddle.com. We're a subsidiary of the Scout NFL Network, which you can find us at milehighhuddle.com or scout/NFL/den. You can also find our podcast, In the Huddle, with myself, Chad Jensen, and the great Brandon Perna. We produce episodes that air every Thursday. They get released. We got a new one coming out this Thursday. Going to break down the ball game, and you can find me on Twitter at Jake D. Marson. So thank you very much for having me on, Dkrom.
My pleasure, Jake, and thank you for joining us. And tomorrow night, Trey Crosby will join us to break down the Panthers and what they have to do to win their first ever Lombardi Trophy in franchise history. And that does it for tonight's edition of Super Bowl Week here at Sports Krunch with Dkrom. For Jake Marsing, I'm David Cromwell. So long, everybody, and enjoy Super Bowl Week.